Good evening, everybody. This is the Inland Regional Center performance contract for 2020. Thank you for joining us today. Members of the audience, how we would like to do this is as we talk about the measures, when we're done with the measures, we will ask for questions, and then we will discuss questions or discussion points at that time. For members of those of you that are streaming at home via live stream, go ahead and type in your questions. If you think of something later, a measure later, go ahead and type in the measure that you want to discuss, and we can go back to it once we finish the measure that we're on. The goal of today is to provide the details of the performance contract for Inland Regional Center for the performance calendar year 2020. We want to get public feedback, and we want to take your questions, and the feedback, what we want to do is incorporate them into the final plan that we then send into DDS, DDS being the Department of Developmental Services. It will be streamed, as we talked about, and it'll be translated in Spanish for those of you. And so with that, because of the translation, I will talk a little bit slower so it gives the translator time to catch up and also do the presentation for the Spanish speakers. What is the performance contract? Every year, the Department of Developmental Services, the oversight agency for the 21 regional centers, sends out a contract that the regional centers then abide by in service provision. And within that, there is a need to have a performance contract. The performance contract is defined in Division 4.5 of the Welfare and Institution Code, commonly called the Lanterman Act. And within Section 4629 are the details of what makes up the performance contract. The performance contract essentially is a series of measures that the DDS, the Department of Developmental Services, uses to monitor the efficacy of service provision for the regional centers. There's three primary areas. Those areas that incorporate most of the measures are residence, employment, and diversity services. And for Inland Regional Center, when we talk about diversity or disparity, our two areas are Spanish-speaking Hispanic ethnicity and the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. Those are the two areas for Inland Regional Center that count as disparity measures. The importance of the contract, as we stated, is it determines how well a regional center is functioning within their community. And the importance of tonight is to get community input and involvement within making that plan. So therefore, the community has a say in what the measures are for the regional centers. So therefore, we're asking the community for their input tonight. What we will do after the input and kind of a timeline for everybody to understand is I'm basically going to start from point one. Typically in August of every calendar year, the Department of Developmental Services sends out the performance contract guidelines. About 4 or 5 years ago, there was approximately 10 measures. This year, there's about 22. So the performance measures differ from year to year. The regional centers then, and what Inland does is we schedule a public comment input session, and then we take the input and we put it into a plan that then goes to the Board of Trustees in September. The Board of Trustees then review the plan and give it approval. The approved plan then goes to the Department of Developmental Services in November of that year for the next calendar year. And so currently we are about 4 months away from the discussion points that we're having today being implemented for the year 2020. What then happens is that plan is how the Inland Regional Center is measured for the calendar year 2020. In February or March of 2021, the Department of Developmental Services will provide a draft report to the Inland Regional Center measuring and each of the 22 measures essentially grading us for achievement on those measurements. Achievement is based upon improvement over the prior year's baseline, or we exceed the statewide average, or we equal to or we exceed the department standards for that measure. Those are the three measurement processes. And then in July of 2021 and every July hereafter, the Inland Regional Center will review the previous calendar year's performance contract after or during a Board of Trustees meeting. That will be in July, annually hereafter. And then we will discuss the outcomes in a public forum of that previous year's performance contract. At this point, that's a description of what our intentions are here today, what we hope to accomplish, and why we're here, and then the standards as to how we're going to be assessed per those measurements. Before we go into the 22 measures, I'd like to ask anybody in the audience or streaming on the live stream if they have any questions up to this point. At this point, we're going to move on to Public Policy Measure 1. As I stated, there's 22 measures. The first dozen or so are very detailed, and we will go through those very in a thorough manner. After that, we start getting to some measures that are very similar to the first 12 measures, and what I will do is basically state, see Measure 5 as an example. Public Policy Measure 1. The first three measures will help us better determine the gap in services for the Hispanic ethnicity Spanish-speaking clients. This is versus other ethnicities. This is a newer measure for this performance contract. And Public Policy Measure number 1 is indicators showing the relationship between annual authorized services and expenditures by an individual's residence type and ethnicity. This measure is new, and it's actually quite a critical measure because there's thought that especially in some of the Hispanic communities, that they keep the clients at home and they don't utilize some of the more expensive the service codes like residence or day program. So what they want to measure is where is the gap, and is the gap true for the residence type. Hispanic ethnicity is, as I stated, the Inland Regional Center's primary disparity measure. IRC has decreased the disparity in 2018 when the respite cap was lifted. The respite cap was lifted in January of 2018, and as an example, 2018 Inland Regional Center saw an increase in respite authorizations at 3,000 clients, 3,000 POS, purchase service requests, and that helped us decrease the disparity. I believe it was 1.8%. Any questions on Public Policy Measure number 1? And again, if you have questions on Public Policy Measure 1 as we go forward, just make sure you put in the line where you're typing Measure 1 or whatever measure it is you're requesting. We're going to go to Public Policy Measure 2. Just so for clarity, this is a series of 3 slides, primarily because of the action items on the right. The policy measure is percent of total annual purchase of service expenditures by an individual's ethnicity and age. And they're going to grade in 3 areas: birth to age 2, age 3 to 21, and 22 and older. And again, this is to help us determine and understand where the disparity is within the Hispanic ethnicity according to age levels. Some of the action items that Inland Regional Center is providing is we have a diversity outreach coordinator that it does a lot of the engagement, staff training, vendor training, community training, and does a lot of our partnerships with the stakeholders in the community. We also utilize community-based organizations at Inland Regional Center. Some of the ones we're currently using are Exceptional Parents Unlimited, the Autism Society of Inland Empire, Team of Advocates for Special Kids, and University of California, Riverside, the Regents of University of California, Riverside. Those 4 community-based organizations, or as some might commonly refer to as the CBOs, are the frontline service providers that essentially vendor with the department and then come down to the Inland Regional Center. We contract with them, and then they provide services that are very specialized for our Hispanic community. Other stakeholders that we work with in order to help us examine and understand our disparity and also educate to the disparity are Office of Clients' Rights Advocates and State Council on Developmental Disabilities. The second slide on Measure 2 talks about our interagency collaboration. I'm not going to go through the 5 that are up there, but those are some more stakeholders in the community that we collaborate with in order to, again, understand and figure out how to best manage the disparity items that we have. IRC also hosts annual empowerment conferences. We're going to have one coming up in September. Please check the website and talk to your service coordinator if you're interested. We have an annual fall festival that will be in the city of Riverside this year. Again, please check the website, and we would love to see all of you out there participating at the fall festival. And finally, on the bottom of this action items to obtain, there are 2 links, one in English, one in Spanish, to the Inland Regional Center website. So those are the links that you can utilize to get to those sites to find out what we're doing. And just about everything we're talking about today will be on that website. We're going to go to the 3rd slide on Measure 2. Okay, I'm going to hold for a question.
They're actually on Measure 1.
Okay.
I think it just might, maybe we want to wait a little bit and just see.
Okay.
Because it takes a second.
Okay, we're going to go back to Measure 1.
Yeah. Okay, and there's questions on Measure 2 as well. So Measure 1, regarding policy, I'm just going to read them verbatim,
That's
so
fine.
that way we
That's
make
fine.
sure they don't get lost in translation. RE Policy Measure 1, how will public give input and ideas to ensure bridging the gap? And also, I ask/demand that IRC allow the measures 1 through 22 be accessible in hard copy for the public and allow the public to add written comments and concerns for measures not met and not being met. So I did indicate that we do have digital copies available online in English and Spanish, and that there is a survey where the community can submit any input that they like. So
Okay.
that's Measure 1.
And then the hard copy, can we ask that they in a survey or in a survey then give their address and we can email or however they want to do it, and then we can mail it off to them so they can get the hard copy? Okay. And kind of the main question there is how do we give input, and that's what we're here for. So also, you have the survey that you can utilize to give input, and you can also type in what your input is for Measure 1. It will be tallied by our staff, and that will be utilized to put in the report to the Board of Trustees. Okay. And then Measure 2?
Measure 2.
Okay, let me get to Measure 2.
You got it. Okay, Measure 2. You keep referencing the 4 community-based vendored with the department. However, those programs, vendors, are not offered outside of business hours or limited due to geographical area. Measure 2, why is the list of vendors and policy purchase service offered online as required by DDS? I'm reading these verbatim. Why don't you know the next parent training date, which is scheduled for September? Why not use this forum to announce the date and time of the location? I agree with the aforementioned person on digital copies for community to submit comments and concerns for measures not met. Yes, the survey is available online. I am speaking about hard copy to consumer mail and allow consumers to have at least 30 days to provide input. Not all families know of this public forum. And then someone else said, I would like a hard copy of the measures.
Okay. Can we take the first question?
Yes.
Because there's statements and questions in there. So let's break it down by question.
Okay. I think the first one is a comment just about things, programs not being offered outside of business hours or limited to geographical area. So that's a comment. Why is the list of vendors and policy purchase service offered online as required by DDS? I'm not really sure what that's asking.
Well, the purchase of service data is on the website.
Right.
And it would be under accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And if you need assistance, can we type in like
An email address or phone number?
an email
for us?
address or phone number so we can help you navigate the website in order to get that data? That's important data for the public to review.
You got it. Why don't you know the next parent training date, which is scheduled for September? Why not use this forum to announce that date and time of and location?
Again, the website is, we want people to navigate the website. We want people to be informed, and the website is the best way to do it. So if you can get on the website, you can get the exact dates of the events.
Perfect. And then just additional comments about hard copies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for your questions and input. Your input will be tallied and will be addressed with our Board of Trustees, so thank you. At this time, any other questions on policy measure number 2? Okay, I'm okay with taking them, Amelia, as you get them typed in. I appreciate the fact that the audience is putting the measure numbers in there, because sometimes it might take a little while to type in the request. So we'll go to policy measure number 3. And that is number and percentage of individuals receiving only case management service by age and ethnicity. Again, birth to 2, 3 to 21, and 22 and older. And in 2018, we had, and the reason I'm utilizing 2018 data is because we're currently in performance contract 2019, and the window for that performance contract is not closed. So I'm utilizing 2018 data. In 2018, we had approximately 4,000 clients that only had case management services and did not have a purchase of service. It's quite a moving target because Inland Regional Center grows by approximately 2,700 clients a year. So that number goes up and down depending on the clients as they come into our catchment areas and obtain services. 2 new areas that we want to explore to help reduce the number of clients that do not have purchase of service are on the website. And one of them is a common services tab, and there's fact sheets that go along with it. So those are the common services that are provided by Inland Regional Center, and there's a fact sheet on those services describing what those services actually mean. And we invite the public to get onto that so they have an understanding of what services the Inland Regional Center provides. Once you have a better understanding, you can call your case management service coordinator and discuss the services in more detail. A second area is the service provider search tool, which is under the service provider tab on the Regional Center website. The tab is interactive, and you can get on there. It's with both counties, and you can type in what service you're looking for specifically, or you can type in all, and then it will do a geocode with a map of the area you're looking for. And you can break the search down by zip code, and you can even say a specific zip code and up to within a certain amount of miles, 10, 20 miles. And then it'll geocode on the map where those service providers are. And it's a very interactive tool, and what we want to do is get that out there for the families to look at. What we want you to do is take a look at that and figure out what makes sense for you and your family, or per service, and then what you can do is having a more informed discussion with your service coordinator about what you would like to do to meet the needs of the client and or yourself. Any questions on policy measure 3? We'll move on to measure 4. There we go. So some of the new measures over the last couple of years deal with employment. This one is an employment measure. So the total number of $1,250 or $1,500 incentive payments made for fiscal year. What this means is if a vendor gets a client a job in the community that is minimum wage or higher, they are eligible for an incentive payment for finding that job and securing that job for the client. And for finding the job, they get $1,000. If the client is still successful and within that job after 6 months, they get a $1,250 bonus, and then, well, an incentive payment, excuse me. And then after a year, $1,500 incentive payment. And again, the the 2019 information is not complete yet, so I'm going to use fiscal year 2018 and 19 data. And the data goes up to currently, that from what we have from the department, is November of 2018. So we have 5-month total for fiscal year 18-19. And for all 21 regional centers, in the most current data set for those 5 months, Inland Regional Center has secured 63 payments. And that actually ranks us first out of all 21 regional centers. We have the most integrated employment payments for the regional center system. In fiscal year 17-18, we were 6th in the state with incentive payments. So currently, with the efforts of the employment specialists and the vendor community coming on board, understanding the importance of employment in the Inland Empire, we are one of the top performing regional centers in employment category. One of the methods and one of the reasons for this also, though, is the great collaboration we have with our Department of Rehabilitation and our 2 counties' workforce development boards. Those have been paying off in getting good jobs for our clients. Any questions on measure 4?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
Do we have any data on what type of CIE our consumers are securing?
The question, in case those of you streaming didn't hear, is do we have any data on what type of employment the CIEs or the competitive integrated employment bonus incentive payments are securing? And no, we're currently not drilling down that deep, but that would be very interesting data. And I think if we added a field to the employment specialist data sheet, it wouldn't be hard to track that going forward. So we can take that comment and take a look with the employment specialist. That would be very interesting data. Any other questions on measure 4? Yes?
Could we also add number of hours a week average and the pay?
The question was, can we add to that data the number of hours of week and the rate of pay? And I believe that data is on the spreadsheets. So if you're curious, what we can do is talk to the employment specialists and they can get you that data. Not a problem. Any questions? Measure 4? Policy measure 5 is increase the number and percent of adults residing in the home of a parent or guardian. So this is essentially what's called a family home. The Lanterman Act puts a lot of value in the fact that the best place for a client is the family home or their own home, not so much residential placement, those type of placement models. So we are, as a regional center, charged with creating services in our local areas to meet those needs of the clients that want to stay in their own home or the parental home or the home of a guardian. Some of the activities that we continue to do is we continue to increase the number of respite vendors. We continue to recommend and in some cases demand that those respite vendors hire people that speak Spanish and some of the other languages that are non-English. And we're increasing the independent living service vendor and also increasing the amount and type of day services that are options for our clients. Those are the types of services that can be utilized to help secure and keep a client in the parental home or their own home. Some added resources that we have seen of recent from the department have been an increase in safety net services, such as crisis response services and crisis assessment services. And Inland Regional Center has also vendored 2 additional crisis response services to be utilized in those emergent situations when the clients need them, and to help secure the clients in their home. Again, I want to point out on the bottom of the actions to attain objectives, there is another reference to the common services list that is on the website and the service provider search tool, both valuable tabs on our website to get information so you, the parent or the client, can make better, more informed decisions on what services are best for you and your family. There's also the fact sheets that give a better descriptor of those programs. And also, so this goes back to the person who asked the question, what is the exact day of an event? Well, we have a full calendar of community activities, so go ahead and get on there. There might be some other activities you find interesting. That's the value of the really, in my humble opinion, it's a very good website for the families to take a look at and get informed. Any questions on Measure 5? Sure. Do you prefer that I use the microphone? That's okay. Oh yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Curtis.
Hi, I have a question. I'm wondering how IRC plans to balance the need to increase the number and percent of adults in family homes versus the desire of clients who may want independent living or may not want to live with their parents or families anymore, and how that will work or how that will be enforced.
That's a good question. The balance is the key to everything. Also, the key to this is client choice. The Lanterman Act is built upon the choice of a client, but that choice, it needs to be a healthy choice and a choice that everybody can agree with. So if a client wants to move out and it is, according to the interdisciplinary team, the right choice, then that's where the service coordinator needs to make a decision based on for the client and help advocate for that client to be an independent liver. A lot of these situations are very independent in nature. So we do take client choice into consideration. Further question on this?
Yes, I have a follow-up question.
Okay.
Will service coordinators get training or any kind of guidance on how to best advocate for their clients' wishes, especially in light of this policy?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, currently we are, as Inland Regional Center, training our staff on the theories and principles of person-centered thinking. And we've had the first four classes of staff go through those trainings. Some of us in this room have had the opportunity to go through the training. It's very valuable because it takes the lessons of getting to know the client and getting to know them on a different level than just coming in and doing an IPP, individual program plan, based on the CEDAR. You get to know them and you get to figure out who they are and what their wants are. So yes, that we think there's a lot of value in person-centered thinking, and that training will help the service coordinators make better decisions and help them advocate better for the situation and the clients.
Okay. So this seems to be like about a minute lag on when you stop talking and when it shows up on the video. So we need a little bit more time so that we can get those questions. So question for Measure 5, why not add or collaborate with local housing development and services, outlining community living options, financial management services, homemaker services, housing access supports, etc.?
And that's a very good question. We currently are aligned with both counties' housing and urban development groups, the housing consortiums. And we have a project in Desert Hot Springs where we're getting our clients affordable housing, but they have to meet a very strict set of guidelines. And if that is you feel appropriate, then talk to your service coordinator, who can then link with the affordable housing specialist here at Inland Regional Center. Currently, the parameters for getting into that is either homelessness or at risk of homelessness. And that second component, it could work for a lot of people. We are also currently in the works with Chelsea Development out of San Diego and the city of Coachella, and we will have a 10-unit affordable housing project that is currently under development, will be under development here very soon. And so we are trying to meet the needs of our population with utilizing affordable housing.
Okay. There's another question. This is also a Measure 5 question. Why do you not have a subservice for behavioral respite?
Behavioral respite was disallowed by the legislature and the Department of Developmental Services about 3 years ago. So what we've done to kind of counterbalance that is we've created some programs, like I talked about, the crisis response services that we can utilize in conjunction with some of our specialized services. So talk to your service coordinators, have them discuss those type of specialized services, and they will then take those requests to the behavioral health team, which will assess for the need for those specialized services that have essentially, I can't say taken the place of behavioral respite, but have been created to fit a need that behavioral respite used to have.
Thank you. And then we have a question on Measure 4. If we can go back to Measure 4.
Not a problem.
Perfect. Thank you. Measure 4. When will person-centered planning be provided to consumer, especially for consumers selected for SDP?
The reason we're going through the training of our staff in a very robust and quick manner is because self-determination, which is referred to as SD, is coming very soon. So we are getting those service coordinators that have clients in the self-determination pilot up and running and up to speed with person-centered thinking. So they're able to work with the families and the clients on writing an IPP that's based on person-centered thinking. And what we have just recently come into knowledge is there is a person-centered planner, person-centered vendor that was recently vendored with San Gabriel Pomona Regional Center that we are going to utilize for our families to provide the training to the families and the clients who are in that pilot project. So please, again, talk to your service coordinators so we can get that service set up for the families if they're interested in the training for person-centered thinking.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions we're up to Measure 5? Okay, and I'm going to try to be very cognizant of the delay. But this is working out well to where you just tell us what the measure is, and we can go back and talk to that measure. Policy Measure 6, decrease the number and percentage of regional center caseloads in state developmental centers. This has always been a measure that the Inland Regional Center has taken quite seriously. We have some of the lowest numbers in the state. Currently, we have 21 clients in the developmental centers, 12 at Porterville. And that's a pretty static number because Porterville is essentially the developmental center where the clients go if they have court issues. So if they have if they're what we call a forensic client and they have a criminal case, they go to Porterville to gain competency to stand trial. So that number is pretty static. It's not a number that we can really, over the years, get under or below because 40,000 clients, there's always typically going to be somebody in the criminal justice system. We have 1 at Fairview and we have 8 at Canyon Springs. Canyon Springs is a very fluid developmental center for us because we utilize that as more of a step-down developmental center from either Fairview or Porterville. And those clients are very close to community reintegration if they're at Canyon Springs. One of the reasons we have such low numbers is because of the foresight of the Department of Developmental Services and their creation of the safety net. The safety net is essentially an acronym, a term for for the services that are vendored through the Department of Developmental Services to meet those intense and sometimes frequent behavioral needs of the clients that are in the developmental centers. And they're there to kind of bridge the gap when they reintegrate into the community, and then to successfully keep that placement in the community. So there's a lot of services and supports out there to help with our developmental center caseload numbers. Again, we typically, because of Porterville and because of the forensic issue, we typically have about 4 or 5 going into Porterville every year, and we have about 4 or 5 coming out of Porterville every year. Inland's numbers have been pretty static in the high teens, low 20s for about the last 5 or 6 years. Any questions on Measure 6? And we do. Okay, and we're going to go back to Measure 5 for the audience.
Measure 5 question. What a one-stop shop for young adults that are not only IRC clients, but also DOR clients. So I think the question is, what about a one-stop shop for people who receive our services and also services from DOR?
A one-stop shop is widely used by the Department of Rehabilitation, and they don't always serve just clients with intellectual or developmental disabilities. And a one-stop shop could be of benefit for our clients, and we do team with Department of Rehabilitation, and if that's an appropriate resource, then we will utilize it. It is not for everybody, but it is for some of the clients, and it is an option. And good question, thank you. Any other questions? We're going to go back to 6. Any other questions on 6? We'll move to Measure 7. Let me get a little organized with my slides here. Policy Measure 7 is increase the number and percentage of minors residing with families or in home settings. And home settings can include the home of a parent or guardian, as well as foster home agencies. The measurements are fairly basic. It's either the parent, the guardian, or what we call an FHA, foster home agency. Our goal at Inland Regional Center, our goal at the whole regional center system, is to support our clients in a home-like setting. So this goal is very important. And it kind of mirrors one of our last policy measures, which is we try to develop resources, and we try to utilize the safety net, and we try to use crisis-type services to help families keep the minors in the home setting. Any questions on Measure 7? Yes?
My niece Donna is in foster care right now, and I heard she's a client of Inland Regional Center. Is there any way you guys can work with girls about her age and disability?
Okay. This, for the audience streaming, was a more personal question, and we would like to refrain from using names of the clients, just for their dignity and respect. But talk to your service coordinator and try to find out if that is an option. Okay? Thank you. Any other questions up to Policy Measure 7, regarding Policy Measure 7 and up to Measure 8? We'll move to Measure 8. Policy Measure 8, increase the number and percentage of adults residing in home settings. So this is essentially just like the last measure, but it's not measuring minors, it's measuring adults. For adults, though, a home setting can include independent living, supported living, or adult family agency homes, FHA, and consumer family home. So this is basically a client not living in a board care or an intermediate care facility or a skilled nursing facility. And what we do is, again, it's similar to Measure 5. We do include the family home agency. In our family home agencies, we are trying to develop, like earlier we had a good question on affordable housing. We are looking at multiple ways to meet our clients' needs, because quite honestly, the economy has caught up to the Inland Empire. And to purchase a home to where 4 clients can have their individual rooms as well as enough space to have a home-like environment and have it be affordable we're losing that option. So what we have to do is look at other alternative options to meet the housing need. And independent living, supported living services, and affordable housing, and adult family home agencies are an option. And currently we're in development with 2 family home agencies, FHAs, in development, and what we'd like to do is offer those options to our clients. Currently we have approximately, give or take, 90 clients in the FHA model, and the FHA model is essentially in a home of a family, and they take up to 2 clients, and they have their own rooms in that home, and the care providers, the family ends up becoming the care providers for those clients. It's a much more natural type of environment, and it's something that Inland's looking to replicate more so we can give our clients those options. It looks like we have a question, so I'm going to hold so questions up to 8, and we're going to go back to 7.
Measure 7. What services does IRC provide to keep minors in the home, affecting families in the home?
Okay, those services, again, you can look at the Common Services Guide on the internet, but some of the services that we currently provide are applied behavioral analysis, and or if you're with IEHP or Kaiser or any type of Medicaid plan, then we would do deductibles, co-payments. One of the biggest assistance for families is respite, and like I stated earlier, in January of 2018, the cap that was previously on respite is off. Respite is probably the biggest service that minors in the family homes use, because it gives the parents a little bit of a break from the constant care needs of the clients. There are crisis services, there are behavioral services that we can put in the homes also. My recommendation would be to look at the website, look at the common services, and then call up your service coordinator if you feel like you need any of those services to help you keep your loved one in the family home. We're going to go back to measure 8. And questions on measure 8 up to now? Yeah, you might as well just. I know. We have another question from the audience.
In the live chat.
Okay, question from YouTube. Measure 8. According to IRC Performance Contract Plan for 2019, it stated, quote, IRC will create a PSA to assist parents/consumers in understanding how to request POS. When will this be done?
That is a very good question. I don't have the answer to that, but that is something that we can, if that's a request from the community, that's something that we can look into creating. And thank you for that's a good question. I appreciate it.
Measure 8, when will and how will the training for POS using the commonly used service flyer be provided?
I don't quite understand that.
Let me read it one more time.
Okay.
I'm reading it for verbatim, and I don't want to add
my
my
own
own interpretation.
I appreciate that.
Measure 8, when will and how will the training for, quote, POS using the commonly used service flyer be provided? It might be asking how to interpret the commonly used services listing. Like if we were going to provide a training on that.
There really is no training other than the fact sheet. If you'd like more detail on that, the service coordinators are always available to answer those questions. A lot of these go back to getting informed. What we want to do is we're creating platforms for our families and our clients in the community to educate themselves, to then ask more informed questions of the service coordinators. And so what we want to do is just give you the knowledge and the facts that are out there, and please ask questions. That's what it's there for. It's there to open up thought, to stimulate thought, and to see what might be appropriate for the clients and the families.
So the question, I believe, is about the PSA. Measure 8, if it wasn't done in 2019, wasn't done then, how will we make sure that it is done now?
We will do the PSA this upcoming fiscal year. The PSAs, because of the technology and the time and the time, honestly, that it takes to do a public service announcement, sometimes we get backed up on those public service announcements. But it is something we're utilizing as well as social media and those sites. But we're still a little, we're still new to those. But it does take time, and we will provide it this year. We good for now? Okay, so we're going to move to measure 9. Decrease the number of minors living in facilities serving 6 or more people. This one gets a little tricky for Inland Regional Center because we have a large subacute facility in Loma Linda that we utilize for some of our clients, and it's one of the few in the state. So sometimes clients get transferred to that subacute and come onto our caseload ratio numbers. It serves quite a large population, and it's very necessary throughout the state. So this is a measure we tend to be rather high on, but typically it's because of that facility. We don't have too many other intermediate care facilities that are more than 6 people. And the reason this is important is once you get above six clients in a home, it really loses the home-like setting. So we at Inland Regional Center have for years, at least a decade, demanded that the homes that are being developed and provided are only up to 4 people in a home. And that creates a better living environment in our terms. So what we've done is recommend 4 homes. Well, we demand 4 homes and 6-bed model. Although it's the performance contract says 6, we typically don't do that. But in this measure, because we have the subacute for children in our local area, we feel like it's very important to keep it open, and it serves families' needs very well. Questions on measure 9 or any other measures up to now? Measure 10 is decrease the number and percentage of adults living in facilities serving more than 6 people. And again, I kind of described the theories of how we develop residential facilities at Inland Regional Center in the last policy measure. We have approximately 8 total facilities that are over a 6-bed. Some of them are more of a medical model to where it's independent living, which then, if they're on the same grounds, if they have a medical ailment, they can go to the medical model on the same umbrella, on the same grounds. If necessary, they have a skilled nursing facility on the same grounds also. It serves a very good purpose for some of our clients that have that need, especially some of our more elderly clients. We have a facility in the high desert that deals with traumatic brain injured clients called Casa Colina. That's a large congregate living facility. Again, it's a specialized facility that we feel is important to meet a subset of needs in our community. So we do have some facilities that are more than 6 people that we will not ever really be able to get below. Otherwise, again, our model and what we demand from new development is only up to 4 people living in a facility. Any questions for this up to measure 10? I'll take a little break here while we kind of get caught up. Measure 11 is the number and percentage of clients aged 16 to 64 with earned income. This one is measured by the Employment and Development Department data. I would personally, on a personal note, I would love to see this data incorporated into our CEDAR, which is something that the service coordinator utilizes when they sit down and do the individual program plan with the clients and the families. It just would be so much easier in that subset, but that's not what we have, and we use the EDD data up to now. Our employment specialists are working diligently, again, with the workforce development boards in the 2 areas, and also We're implementing employment models and employment services within our day service vendor community for a better percentage of clients getting earned income and also getting non-sub-minimum wage employment, so minimum wage or higher. Any questions on Measure 11? Measure 10, okay.
Measure 10. Is there an advisory or advocacy committee that oversees the facility?
Depending on what facility it is, if it's a skilled nursing facility, there's the ombudsman. It's advisory and what else? I'm sorry?
Advocacy?
Advocacy, okay. You have the Office of Clients' Rights, you have State Council on Developmental Disabilities, you have Adult Protective Services, you have Community Care Licensing, and you also have the Quality Assurance Department of Inland Regional Center that all oversee the variety of our facilities. Not all of them. Not all the agencies are in every facility, but those are the oversight agencies. I'm sure I'm probably missing a couple, but there's a lot of oversight agencies that monitor the efficacy of the service delivery in our residential facilities and also do advocacy for our clients.
Got another question, but I'm asking for a little clarification.
Okay. Okay. In the meantime, go ahead.
So this is just, this is kind of a general question. I'm still confused how the Employment Development Department gets that information. So when we have individuals who don't disclose that they have a disability or that they're a regional center client, or individuals that may be in a workshop that aren't Department of Rehab clients, like where that information actually comes from.
That's a very good question, and that's one of the reasons why I would like to see the data driven by the CEDAR. That could be a measure that can have some grassroots and move up, because that's a good question. If the clients, and a lot of the clients that are capable of walking into a one-stop shop or utilizing employment, the EDD, aren't going to disclose that they have a disability because it's not in their best interest. And so the data could be skewed. I do understand that. Thank you for that question. Okay, I'm going to move on to Measure 12. And again, we can always go back to the measures. We don't have a problem doing that. Thank you to the audience for telling us which measure. We do appreciate that. Measure 12, annual earnings of consumers aged 16 to 64 compared to people with all disabilities. Again, this is the EDD data. We would like to see the data incorporated into like the CEDAR. We can get data, and we talked a little bit earlier about the data that our employment specialists collect. That is the data that our vendors get the jobs for those clients, but that in comparison to people with all disabilities is going to be a little bit difficult, and right now we're dependent upon the EDD for that data. I'm going to move to 13. Any questions on Measure 12? Measure 13 is the average annual wages for consumers aged 16 to 64. Again, it's the EDD data. This is kind of see Measure 11, see Measure 12. This is data that is given to us by the department, and then we then incorporate it into the performance contract. As 11, 12, and 13 are all very similar, we're going to move to Measure 14. Again, I will take questions if they come in on those three. Measure 14, number of adults who attained competitive integrated employment following participation in the paid internship program. Again, that is data that's kept by the employment specialists, and we do track that, and that will be discussed again for this performance contract in July of 2021. But some of the data for right now, the paid internship program for the fiscal year 18-19 up to November 18, so 5 months, We ranked 7th in the state for the amount of paid internships that we have. And for the fiscal year prior, 17-18, we were 5th in the state for the amount of paid internships. The difficulty with the paid internship program is the vendor community doesn't get a whole lot of incentive to start a paid internship, but when they get the competitive integrative employment, there is the incentive that we talked about in the previous measure. So it behooves the vendor community to try the PIPs, the paid internship programs, and then help coach the client through to where the business then hires them. And we will have data on that in July. One of the really kind of, it's different for the rest of the state. One of the things we have, and we're very fortunate in our area, is a good collaborative with the Department of Rehabilitation. And our agreement with them is we will do a paid internship program while the client is in the last 6 months of their workability program in school. So that's a strong benefit to our clients, and our local school districts have been very quick to grasp this, because it's just it's extra training that they can provide the client that 6 months before they then transition to out of school and into our vendor programs. And that's where we're at Inland seeing a lot of success with the paid internships moving into competitive integrative employment. Any questions up to 14? Okay.
Do you want to go in chronological order, start at 10 and then?
Sure.
All right, let's start at 10. That was the one that we asked for more clarification. So the original question was, measure 10, why are you not pushing for changes in older development? The clarification was specifically older ARFs that have more than 4 clients.
The law changed about 2 years ago with Assembly Bill, I believe it was X21. I might be swapping the 2 and the X on that one. And it offered the opportunity for our older, let's just say our seasoned, established adult residential facilities to make a change, to go from 6-bed to 4-bed, or 6 clients to 4 clients. And we're not pushing it right now for those homes to go to 4-bed, because quite honestly, some of the homes out there that have 6 clients, it's the home for those 6 clients, and that's the only home those clients have ever known. And for us to walk in and insist that 2 of the 6 move to a different facility, it's just not something we should do. And that's the stance of the Inland Regional Center. And over time, our agreement is with those homes, though, that when somebody wants to move or they exit the facility, they will go to 4 beds at that time. But we've been very supportive of our existing providers if they want to keep the 6 clients, because that's their home. Okay. 13?
Yes.
Okay.
The question is, could a survey be sent out to consumers to collect data?
We can look at that. I don't have a problem looking at that. We'll put that in the comments, and all the comments will be reviewed. And thank you for that thought. That's a great thought.
Measure 14.
Measure 14. We're catching up.
Who is the IRC employment specialist who is supposed to be, quote, continue meeting with local chambers of commerce and workforce development boards to develop opportunities? Here's the second part of that question. What opportunities have been developed from 2018 to 2019, and could the opportunities have been increased had there been more employment specialists?
Okay, good questions. I might ask for the second question again here in a second.
Absolutely.
But the first question is who are the employment specialists? And for San Bernardino County, it's Andrew Burdick, and for Riverside County, it's Beth Crane. And their role essentially has been, for the last 2.5 years that position's been in existence, is to redevelop the day service system in order to meet the employment needs that you see in these performance contracts. And over time, they've had to develop trainings. They've had to do internal trainings for the vendor, for the service staff, the service coordinators, and external trainings for the vendor community. And that was the first couple years of their jobs. Just in the last 6 to 10 months, they really started getting into the chambers of commerce, some of them, and the workforce development boards and developing those relationships. There just wasn't enough time in the developing job in the first couple of years in order to get them into those pieces. But on a tangential side note, Mr. Andrew Burdick is currently in Monterey, and he's at a Workforce Development Board sponsored conference for members of the state's workforce development boards. And they're training and doing a presentation with a local member of the San Bernardino County Workforce Development Board and the Department of Rehabilitation on the employment programs and the collaborative efforts that we're utilizing in our area. Our area is, we're very proud to say we're on the cusp of something different here and utilizing different thought processes to get employment for our clients. And we're just on the cusp of starting something. And we think we're going to gain some momentum, and this will take off. But everything that we put in place takes time to implement. It really does. And the second question, I'm sorry, the second part, Amelia?
According to 2019 IRC Performance Contract Plan, it stated, oh, that's an additional question on 14, excuse me. Okay. What opportunities have been developed from 2018 to 2019? Could the opportunities have increased had there been more employment specialists?
And we talked about the opportunities and the timeline of development. And yes, advocate for more employment specialists. We could use them.
Measure 14. According to 2019 IRC performance contract, it stated, quote, CSC will review employment options annually during the IPP planning process. Quote, when do we as consumers demand that CSCs do this? And my response was, we encourage you and all of our clients at any point in discussions with service coordinators to discuss goals and plans such as employment.
Absolutely. And every individual program plan, even transition age, like 14 and above, you can talk about employment options. Even at 14, that's really where the system's going at starting transition services to the workforce. So we recommend that you talk to your service coordinator at the IPP, at the program plan, and get that into the IPP because it's important. And if your service coordinator is refusing, then basically talk to the program manager, and we'll do some training on the importance of adding that to the individual program plan. Let's go to measure, I believe we did 15. Measure 16. Average hourly or salaried wages and hours worked per week for adults who participated in paid internship program during the fiscal year. This is data that's collected by the employment specialist and shared with the department, and then the department then again puts that data onto these performance contracts, and we report that in July of every year. Let's see, essentially the paid internship can, if you're working minimum wage, be utilized at about right around up to 12 to 14 hours a week for our clients. So it's an excellent opportunity to get coaching and life skills while on the job and while getting at least minimum wage pay for that job. Questions on 16?
Not a question. Someone just wanted to thank you, and they said they're impressed, and they thank us for this public forum.
Thank you for the positive note. We appreciate that. We really do.
I have a quick question, and it was actually may have been for measure 15, but it's about the paid internship program. Okay. You mentioned that employers aren't super keen on paid internship program. Do you have any idea of why that is? Like what feedback you get for that? And, is it the reimbursement? Is it reasonable accommodations?
It's difficult. Employers, it's pretty simple when you're an employer. And I'm going to use my brother's small business as an example. And we were talking about this one day, like, hey, why don't you, because he has a business out of San Diego, and it's like, why don't you go to San Diego Regional Center and see if you can open up a conduit to see if you can get some of the young adults in here to work with you. And he said, that's not bad. What's in it for me? And second question, can they do the job? And so that, and I'm not, we kind of debated back and forth about it, but that is the debate that a lot of businesses have. Those are the two concerns. What's in it for me? Because a lot of times when a paid internship is there, that means there's a coach, a second person at the job site assisting them. And some jobs, it precludes that from happening. It's just not appropriate. It's not available. And then the other piece is quite honestly, can they do the job? And there are some jobs out there. I'm going to utilize the Amazon warehouse jobs or UPS. Those are jobs that move quick, and they're demanding, physically, emotionally demanding jobs. And it takes special people to go into those jobs and be successful. It doesn't mean it precludes our clients from going into those jobs. It's just there are some jobs that are difficult. And so the paid internship program has some difficulties with that, because quite honestly also, we're looking for somebody to open up their doors as an employer and take a chance on our clients. And when the paid internship program is really for those clients that might not have the skill level to be really competent at the job, but it's there for them to learn how to be competent. And that's okay, because we have a lot of success stories where the internship has turned into work, but not as many as we want. The system, we could use more.
It's a question about Measure 16.
Okay.
How we as consumers and community provide information to prospective employers to offer services and or paid internships to our consumers. Is there a workshop that can be offered to the community?
It's a good question. We should open up a workshop to the community, because quite honestly, I've stood up here before and I've stood up in front of many crowds and said we need grassroots efforts. We need the community to help us find jobs. I mean, if you really think about it, where do we all get our first job? A lot of times it's because our parents know somebody, we know somebody, and they're willing to take a chance. And that's something we'll look into doing. We can have the employment specialist put on a community outreach, because that's a great idea, because the parents are the driving force, typically, for all of us getting our first job.
And we did work with, was it Andrew or just Andrew on that infographic? We worked with Andrew Burdick, who's the employment, I know you know this, the employment specialist for San Bernardino, to create a marketing piece called 5 Reasons You Should Hire Someone with a Disability. So I think we can absolutely make that public, share it on our website, share it on socials, and it talks about the paid internship program.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Please share that. And is it on the website?
It might be in that blog that we wrote, so I'll double check.
Okay.
And then I'll link to it.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And that was a great question from the person there. Thank you. Any other questions on Measure 16? We'll move to 17. Percentage of adults who report having integrative employment as a goal on their IPP. And this gets back to the really good question that we had earlier as to why do the CSCs, why do they not put it on there? That is essentially on the template of the individual program plan, and this is new. The push for employment is newer in the regional center system. So sometimes it takes a little bit of training to get all service coordinators up to speed, and we are training to that. But this is something we want on the individual program plans. The tricky part of this is you see the measurement methodology it's based on the National Core Indicators. And the National Core Indicators are really a triannual report. So what we want to start doing is just making it standard that this is discussed at the IPP for those, let's say 16 and above, and then we report on that in the IPP. Questions on 17 as it relates to employment goal. Measure 18, average wages and hours worked for adults engaged in competitive integrative employment for whom incentive payments have been made. And I believe we had a question from the audience internal, and the answer was that the employment specialists have the data. They calculate the data every calendar year. That goes up to the department. So in July of 2021, we will be reporting the performance contract measure, the same measure for 2019. and the data is collected by the employment specialist. Measure 19, per capita purchase of service expenditure by an individual's primary language for primary languages chosen by 30 or more consumers. It's an odd way of saying 30 or more consumers have the same language. And in our catchment, Inland Regional Center, and this is a new policy measure, and this is a really good policy measure. English and Spanish are the two primary languages in the Inland Empire. There are other 7 languages that 30 or more clients utilize or speak in our system, and almost 40,000 clients. There's Vietnamese, Tagalog, Korean, Arabic, Mandarin Chinese, and American Sign Language. So we will be reporting in July of 2021 for this new measure that's here and for the performance contract for 2020 on those measures for those 8 languages. Any questions up to 19? Measure 20, increase the number and percentage of adults residing in independent living situations. This really kind of goes back to Measure 5, but what it's really teasing out and kind of funneling down is those clients that live on their own. And with the cost of developing community care facilities being quite outrageous, we are utilizing, and the push for Inland Regional Center towards more affordable housing, and we are moving to a model where a lot of more of our adults are living in independent living situations. So our numbers should be going up in the next decade in incremental measurements. So this is something that we place a lot of value on because the options for community care living just aren't as robust as they used to be. Before we go to Measure 21, any questions to up to 20? Measure 21, increase the number and percentage of adults residing in supported living settings. This is very, very similar to the last measure, and quite honestly, it kind of overlaps. If you're truly in an independent living situation, you're not going to be utilizing what's called supported living service. That's essentially a coach and so let's say, Vince, I'm the client, then the vendor sends in a provider to help me manage bills, groceries, those type of things, and then we fund the vendor to send that coach in. Independent living situations, the last measure is essentially the clients living on their own without a whole lot of service provision. This one, the supported living setting, is essentially the same thing, but they have a vendor come in and assist them in securing and being successful in their living arrangement. And essentially, Measure 5 is the same activities that we're going to utilize for this measure. The last 2 measures are just a little more detailed from Measure 5. And before we go to 22, any questions from the audience for 21 and above? Okay. Measure 22, increase the number and percentage of adults residing in adult family home agencies. And we talked about that in Measure 5, how Inland Regional Center is in development with 2 additional family home agency vendors. And currently we run about 90 clients living in this model. This is a model, again, because of the cost of creating a facility out of an existing property, that it's just not so much of an option anymore. What we're looking at is the Family Home Agency, commonly called FHA, an acronym, as a model that we're really trying to develop at the Inland Regional Center. Questions up to, those are the measures, the very specific measures. I'm going to go into a very, very basic description of the compliance measures. These are less related to, the 22 measures are primarily, as we stated, related to residential, disparity, and employment issues, and services surrounding those 3 areas. The compliance measures are essentially for the Inland Regional Center. And as you see, it deals with the independent audit that we have to have and report to the department every year. It has substantial compliance with the DDS fiscal audit, so we have a fiscal audit that we have to supply the department every year. There's measures that we operate within our operations budget, So we get an operations budget every year based on the last year's budget, and we are measured as staying within that budget. How many clients are on the waiver? The waiver, in the layperson's terms here, is the home and community-based services Medicaid waiver. This is the piece where it allows for the state to open up for federal funding to match about half of the service provision that we fund for our clients. The compliance with the vendor audit, so we have to do, based on the number of vendors that we currently have, there's a formula to tell us that we have to do a certain percentage of audits on those vendors. Right now we're running somewhere around 24 audits a year. The CEDAR currency, so are we getting out there and are we doing our IPPs on time, and are we submitting our CEDAR data on time? 7 and 8 deal with intake assessments and timelines. Number 9, again, kind of coincides with number 6, and that's the IPP development. Are those being done within the timelines according to, again, the Lanterman Act? And we put in the section of the Lanterman Act where that's under. And then IFSP, that's the Infant Service Plan, and that's, again, for the early start, the 0 to 3, and that is the IPP essentially for 0 to 3, and then 3 and above have the IPP. Those are the compliance measures. And at this point, any further questions on anything we've discussed in this? And we'll give it about a minute to kind of roll through. But at this time, we're done with the performance contract piece. One thing I want to say is the Tahana fire in Murrieta is quite extensive, and we have had some families had to evacuate to the local shelters, so please keep them in your thoughts. And I want to thank everybody who made the trek out here today to be with us live. Traffic was, I hear, awful, so you're champions for making it out here, and I thank you all. And for those of you that streamed with us, I appreciate the questions and the input. It was very valuable, and we will incorporate that into the plan, and we'll also discuss it with our Board of Trustees. Any questions from the audience? We have one coming up, so that gives you, the folks at home streaming, time to have a question.
I believe this is a statewide issue. Locally we had the Costco shooting that happened, and we have a lot of families that are really concerned about safety issues. And I appreciate Regional Center as part of the new safety task force, and we've identified like 18 different safety issues. But one of our unmet needs is nobody's providing these services. And is there a way for Regional Center to step in if the schools aren't providing them and ABA companies aren't providing them? Then where are these families supposed to go for those unmet needs?
Unmet needs in terms of ABA?
Well, as far as safety in the community, so many ABA providers, medical insurance is saying that it's not medically necessary, so they won't allow their ABA providers to provide it, or the ABA providers won't go out in the community with maybe a teenager who's having some severe behaviors by themselves. So it can range from how do I teach my loved one to act in an active shooting situation, to how do I keep them safe and interacting with law enforcement. I didn't know if that's part of the SLS training, because you're dealing with behaviors and interpretation from the community on how behaviors, you know where I'm going.
Yeah, I understand. And we've kind of chatted about this a bit, and we've briefly discussed it as the administration. We haven't really had a chance to sit down as a group and to really get through it, but we have foreseen this kind of coming from the insurance plans, the termination of services because it's not medically necessary. This is something that we've kind of seen coming, and we do still have ABA vendors, in place as vendors for us. I mean, the rate's not as good as what they can pay over at the managed care, but we still have vendors that are able to provide the service. And yes, we have seen the need kind of go a little higher, and we do need to take a look at that. And we are willing to look at it. We just haven't had a chance to sit down as a group, but we have discussed it. Any questions from the community? Okay.
There's a question about where to share general input, meaning like if it didn't come up right now, where in the future are people able to share that information, suggestions, things, etc.
We have a very good website that you can do it. That you can do that. Amelia, can you kind of guide them on a kind of exactly where
Yeah,
on the website?
absolutely. So the easiest way
Okay.
to get a hold of us is community@inlandrc.org.
Okay.
That goes to our community engagement team. It's monitored by our program manager, and then it's assessed who's the best person that can help with that information, whether it's a question or input provided by the community. You can visit our website, inlandrc.org. We have a contact us. You can either use the search function or you can find it on About Us. You can contact us, and people do, via Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We get a lot of direct messages when people have questions and they're kind of like, oh, I don't know where to go. We get a lot of questions through those avenues. So lots of different ways.
Thank you for that.
You're
And I do have to say our community engagement team that monitors that, Mr. CJ Cook is the program manager, absolute rock star. He gets back to you within 24 hours, sometimes in minutes. So go ahead and don't expect minutes, but what I'm saying is we get back to you very quickly, and your questions are then sent to the right group to take a look at and get you some answers. So thank you, Amelia, for giving us the myriad of options. I do appreciate that. Any further questions from the community? Comments, please.
I just have a suggestion. I know you've been talking about the common services fact sheet a lot on the website, and it's great. It is on the website. I refer to it a lot and send it to families a lot. My suggestion is for CSCs to use that fact sheet and bring it to annual or triennial IPP meetings and make it available for families. Kind of like at IEP meetings where they have here are your ed rights, so that family, because one of the biggest questions that I hear is, I don't know what's available. I don't know what to ask for. And so I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, thank you for that. That would be helpful. And that the fact that when we do a lot of our public input and we take suggestions from the community, that was one of the number one requests is what services do you provide? So that pushed us to create a services list. And that service list isn't all encompassing, but it's the most critical and the most widely used services. And yes, that's the next piece of this. I mean, it's because the service guideline, it's new, and we're large, and we have so many different service coordinators, and some of them get it immediately, and others you need to train a couple times. It's just we all have it, and so we understand that training takes time, and we're doing our best to get them up to speed and trained on utilizing that common services guideline. So thank you for the comment.
I was going to comment on the common services listing. So you can find that at inlandrc.org under consumers and families. Just scroll down. It's like the third category, and you'll find it it says common services at the top, and then you have it in English as well as Spanish. And there's also information on specific services. So there's information like an entire fact sheet on day programs, living options, respite, and transition, in addition to what we also have. There was a question. What is SLS? What is SIT? I'm not sure what that is. And the other crisis prevention program for clients who are not approved by ABA or regional center to be in communities with therapists who can help with safe behaviors.
The SLS is supported living services. They are not trained in any type of behavior modalities. That's a service primarily for clients who are living in their own apartment or their own living situation. And it's a coach to kind of help them successfully navigate living on their own. I'm not sure SIT. I believe that's a vendor-specific question. But any questions regarding the last piece where can we have some assistance taking the clients out in the community and learning skills and the crisis kind of services, that would be through your service coordinator and also through the behavioral health team that would make an assessment for the need of those services. Any more questions from?
Just one last comment,
Okay.
which I think is very poignant and kind of piggybacks on what you were saying is that there's a gap because families are told you have to request a service, but if they don't know what is available, then they don't know, and they don't know how to make the request. So that's just an additional point.
That's a very good point and very well taken. That is the next step. I mean, again, it takes, for an agency this size, when we implement something new, it takes time to get everybody trained and up to speed on it. And that's kind of where we're at this point. And thank you for the comments on that. Any other suggestions, comments, questions? Thank you, everybody, for your participation today and your comments, very valuable. And thank you so much. Please come to the meeting in July, the board meeting, because that's when we'll be discussing the performance contract for 2019. This performance contract will be discussed at the board meeting on July of 2021. Thank you all. Have a wonderful night.